walikuja usiku kama saa 3 ama saa 4. Wakaniambia, nikamuuliza kwa nini mnakuja usiku? Akaniambia tunakuja kuchukua wewe sababu JM amepotea. Nikamuuliza amepotea namna gani? Akaniambia gari yake inaonekana Hilton. Lakini haonekani.
Amidst the uncertainty surrounding the disappearance of Nyandarua MP Josiah Mwangi Kariuki, his family's persistent visits to the mortuary had yielded no answers. They clung to a gleam of hope, believing that if J.M. Kariuki wasn't among the lifeless body at the city mortuary, then he must be alive, albeit in an undisclosed location. However, a mysterious turn of events unfolded during their relentless search. It was J.M. Kariuki's third wife, Terry, who received an enigmatic phone call from a man claiming to be an Israeli businessman. This mysterious caller urged Terry to make yet another trip to the city mortuary to ascertain whether her husband's body was among those cold, lifeless forms on the mortuary's floor. His words were cryptic. "Have you checked whether your husband is lying in the morgue?" Terry was taken aback. She had visited the mortuary repeatedly and never found her husband's body there. But the caller insisted that she checks once more. Without hesitation, Terry rallied J.M. Kariuki's other 2 wives, Nyambura and Mwikali, and together they converged on the Nairobi City Mortuary. Their journey was fraught with anxiety, as they hoped fervently that J.M. was not among the deceased laid out in the mortuary. They entered the mortuary, and among the decomposing bodies, one particular form caught their attention. The mortuary attendant informed Terry and her co-wives that this body had been brought in by the police the previous night. Although the body's face was disfigured and unrecognizable at first glance, Terry noticed something familiar about the clothing: a green jacket and a dotted red scarf. These were unmistakably J.M.'s attire just a few hours before his disappearance. In a moment of disbelief and dread, Terry gingerly pulled up the torn trousers of the body and, to her horror, spotted a distinct birthmark on the thigh. One she knew intimately. It was her husband's unmistakable mark. Terry, the last person to see J.M. alive, couldn't contain her shock and anguish as she cried out, "My God, they have killed my husband." At last, it was confirmed that Josiah Mwangi Kariuki had met a mysterious and tragic demise. But what had truly happened to this former Nyandarua Member of Parliament, whose growing influence had even ignited jealousy in the then President Jomo Kenyatta? Let's delve into the story.
Hello, my name is Chief Okuzo from Plug TV.
J.M. Kariuki was born on March 21st, 1929 in a small village outside Nakuru in the Rift Valley region of Kenya. His parents had been forcibly relocated to this region by British colonial authorities to provide labor for white farmers. J.M.'s early education was erratic due to financial constraints, but a fortunate win at a horse race in Nakuru in 1946 allowed him to complete his high school education at King's College Budo in Uganda. At Budo, J.M. encountered students from across Eastern Africa, many of whom shared stories of colonial injustice. His political awakening took a significant turn when he heard Jomo Kenyatta speaking in 1946. Kenyatta, a charismatic orator, had been advocating for the rights of the Kikuyu people and was instrumental in the Mau Mau movement. J.M. Kariuki later joined the Mau Mau movement, providing supplies to Mau Mau fighters in the field. Arrested by British authorities in 1953, J.M. spent 7 years in harsh detention camps, an experience he later documented in his acclaimed book, Mau Mau Detainee. The account by a Kenyan African of his experiences in detention camps 1953 to 60. His release in 1960 coincided with the end of the Mau Mau movement and the beginning of Kenya's path to independence. J.M. Kariuki played a crucial role in Kenyatta's Kenya African National Union (KANU) and served as Kenyatta's personal secretary until 1969, when disagreements over corruption issues led to a parting of ways. His outspoken support for the country's poorest citizens during a period of economic hardship gained him popularity, but also made him a thorn in the side of the government. Kariuki became famous for saying that he did not want Kenya to be a nation of 10 millionaires and 10 million beggars. His stance against Kenyatta's regime had made him the black sheep in the government at that time. And leading up to his death, J.M. Kariuki was aware of the danger he faced, and he kept close confidants, including Mark Muidaga and Gigi Kariuki, by his side. Mark Muidaga, who was the then Nakuru town MP, on one evening accompanied J.M. to a bar for drinks in Nakuru, and in no time, Nakuru Mayor Mburu Gishwa stormed into the establishment, telling him that his days were numbered and that they would finish him without any provocation to the pair-powered bile on J.M. Ending with a warning: you want to bring trouble to Nakuru, just be warned, your days are numbered and we are going to finish you. Back in Nairobi, Assistant Minister Gigi Kariuki sought out J.M. for lunch to discuss a worrying matter. As they sat by the swimming pool of the Norfolk Hotel, Gigi leaned in and whispered to J.M. that a secret meeting had taken place in Nakuru and a decision had been reached to eliminate him. The political strategy involved engineering a political and security scare and pinning it on him. This move was designed to convince the authorities and the public that J.M. was a dangerous threat that needed to be stopped at all costs, even if it meant taking his life. Gigi's words sent a shiver down J.M. Kariuki's spine, and for the first time, he felt the specter of death looming, though he still believed he could evade it. Gigi advised J.M. to urgently secure an appointment with the aging President Jomo Kenyatta to explain himself. J.M. agreed to do so. His widow Terry would later reveal that her husband had indeed tried to reach the president using the then nominated MP Njenga Karume, who had the president's ear. Such were the perilous times J.M. lived in that even though he was a friend with Njenga Karume, they couldn't risk being seen together in public. Their meetings resembled scenes from spy novels. They would approach each other from different directions on the Nairobi-Nakuru highway and pretend to bump into each other at a petrol station near Naivasha town. It was there that J.M. confided in Karume, requesting an urgent meeting with the president. Karume agreed, but the time was running short. 4 days before the weekend J.M. disappeared, yet another secret meeting convened in Nakuru, this time to discuss the J.M. problem. Now the decision was clear: he must go without further delay. On March 1st, 1975, Mrs. Kariuki took her husband to the doctor for a knee pain, and the doctor advised him to take a break from the public eye, preferably in Mombasa. Heeding this advice, J.M. and a female friend named Elizabeth Koinange secretly booked 2 bus tickets to Mombasa for a Friday night trip. However, just hours before their departure, JM received a mysterious call from someone who claimed to know about the plans to harm him during the bus journey. The caller warned him not to take the same bus he had booked, revealing that special branch police officers were monitoring his movements and plans. Fearing for his life, JM cancelled the trip. On March 1st, 1975, a bomb exploded inside an OTC bus at its Nairobi parking bay, resulting in the death of 27 people. Though no arrests were made despite an extensive manhunt, the blast served as an excuse to apprehend Kariuki for interrogation. JM Kariuki had previously mentioned that his vehicle appeared to have been hit by a bullet, adding to the atmosphere of fear and suspicion. On March 2nd, 1975, Ben Gedhi informed JM that special branch police officers planned to interrogate him. JM was understandably apprehensive, sensing that it was more than just an interrogation. He believed that something sinister was planned against him by these officers, especially after the warning he received earlier about the bus trip. He had been disarmed by Nyandarua DC Joseph Thuo, leaving him vulnerable despite the death threats he had received. Ben offered a solution. He provided JM with his own firearm for protection, but cautioned him not to disclose it to anyone, as it could put Ben in trouble with the government. As they headed into the meeting, JM still had the pistol given to him by Gedhi. Inside the interrogation room, he faced a panel of stern interrogators, including Police Commissioner Patrick Shaw, Wanyoi Kedhungu, and Ignatius Iriganderi, among others. JM had arrived at the Hilton Coffee House at 6:45 on a Sunday evening. He had called his wife Terry to inform her about the meeting with Gedhi. Perhaps due to the trust he had in Gedhi, JM willingly got into Gedhi's Peugeot 504, leaving his Mercedes-Benz with the registration number plate KPE 153 in the hotel's parking lot. He likely assumed he would return for it. Unknown to JM, police reservists, including the infamous Patrick Shaw, had been seen around the hotel chasing away taxi drivers and parking attendants. Other prominent figures such as CID Director Ignatius Nderi and Deputy Director of the National Youth Service Waruhiu Itote were present at the hotel that fateful day. They all loitered around the Hilton Hotel, ready to play their part in the unfolding tragedy. JM was unaware of the betrayal that awaited him. Inside the interrogation room, he engaged in a heated argument with Wanyoi Kedhungu, the man he despised and hated the most. Dhungu struck JM across the face, causing his teeth to fall out. In response, JM reached for the pistol given to him by Gedhi, presumably to defend himself against the assault. Before he could pull the trigger on Dhungu, Gedhi swiftly shot JM in the arm, incapacitating him. Then Gedhi fired a second fatal shot into JM's chest, ending his life on the spot. It is believed that Gedhi resorted to killing JM to silence him because if he spared JM, he might expose the fact that Gedhi had provided him with a firearm from the service, potentially causing problems for him with President Kenyatta, especially if it became public knowledge that the government was involved in the plot. The disposal of JM's body became the next step in their plan. A group of individuals, including John Mutungu of Olkejuado County Council, had arranged to use a vehicle that appeared to transport fresh meat. Marked with a maroon stripe running across its body, This disguised vehicle would transport JM's bleeding body, making it look like just another butchery-bound car. Patrick Shaw had already cleared the area of potential witnesses. They took JM's body to Ngong Forest, hoping it would be devoured by wild animals. A day passed and Terry Kariuki sensed something was amiss. Her husband had not returned home or called. She alerted the family and search parties were sent out. While friends and relatives searched for JM, official circles were already spinning a narrative that he had gone to Zambia or some other place. Finally, on the 7th day of searching, Assistant Minister Justus Oletipis admitted in Parliament that JM was missing and asked for anyone with the information to cooperate with the police. However, it remains uncertain whether the police were actively searching for him. All indications suggested a cover-up. On the afternoon of March 11, some 9 days after JM went missing, the government acknowledged that his body had been identified. Then Vice President Daniel Arap Moi had mistakenly told Parliament that JM's whereabouts were still unknown before this revelation. The nation had been misled into believing that JM was in Zambia, part of a disinformation strategy by the security apparatus. Meanwhile, in Ngong Hills, a Maasai farmer named Ole Tunta stumbled upon a man lying motionless, bleeding from his mouth. The man's pocket had been rifled, and he had no shoes, suggesting he had been tortured elsewhere. Ole Tunta called his neighbor Major Ole Nchonki, and together they reported this discovery to the police, flagging down a tourist van heading to Ngong. Back in Nairobi, JM's family grew increasingly skeptical of the Zambia story as his passport was found at home, and a Zambian government minister confirmed that he had not seen JM Kariuki to Mrs. JM Kariuki. Now, Terry Kariuki received a call from an unidentified Israeli businessman who cryptically asked her if she had checked whether her husband was lying in the morgue. Though the family had already been at the city mortuary twice, the caller urged them to check again. Recovering from the shock, Mrs. Kariuki gathered JM's other wives, Nyambura and Mwikali, and they went to the city mortuary. The government had deployed special branch officials to bar their entry, but when they finally gained access, JM's body had been incorrectly labeled as an unclaimed body of a gangster, scheduled to be handed over to a bereaved family outside the premises. It was evident that the government's attempts to cover their tracks had been thwarted. Inside, they were shown the partially decomposed body of an unidentified adult male, brought in by the police the previous night. Terry immediately identified the body and exclaimed, "God, they have killed my husband." Although JM's face was disfigured, he wore the same green jacket and a dotted red scarf as he did on the morning he left his house, never to return. To be absolutely certain, Terry, in an act of heartbreaking confirmation, pulled down his torn trousers and spotted a familiar birthmark on his right thigh. On March 12, 1975, a police commissioner officially confirmed that JM Kariuki was dead, killed by 2 bullet wounds. Now, during the post-mortem, Mrs. Kariuki would later discover that his discoloration on her husband's face had likely resulted from an acid being poured on it to prevent easy identification. In Nairobi, students took to the streets in anger, and newspaper ran headlines warning that Kenya's stability was at risk. Now, this marked the 3rd murder of an outspoken politician in a span of 10 years at that time. Now, the government responded by setting up a commission of inquiry. However, before the report was published, President Kenyatta demanded the removal of certain names close to him. Consequently, when the report was finally released, the perpetrators were named but remained unpunished, leaving Kenyans to mourn the loss of J.M. Kariuki and to fear the extent of what the government was capable of. And that is the sad story of J.M. Kariuki. What are your thoughts? Leave your thoughts in our comment section. That is it for now. Thanks for watching. Let's meet next time. Bye-bye.